Good morning, my brothers and sisters and followers of the way. Before I get started this morning, I'd like to send greetings in the name of Yahuwah and in the name of our King, Yahushua, to all those of the elect that are scattered all throughout the globe. Those of the elect who know that the Father's true name is Yahuwah and the Son's true name is none other than Yahushua. Those of the elect who are not wavering, but are standing firm in this truth here in these last days, I greet you, my brothers and sisters. I greet you. Now, this morning, I'm going to be moving into my long and awaited teaching that I spoke on months ago that was coming on the Father's true name. And this is going to be the last breakdown teaching that I'm going to do on the Father's name unless the Ruach moves me to do so otherwise, because in this teaching this morning, I'm going to be clearing up all of the confusion that various different scholars and various different teachers have created that have caused stumbling blocks from people and have also hindered them from coming into the accurate knowledge of what the Father's true name is. I'm going to also walk you down from the Hebrew to the English and give you the correct transliteration of the Father's name in English that comes to us from the Hebrew. I'm going to also clear up the confusion surrounding certain consonants and certain vowels. And then I'm going to walk you back to the Hebrew and break the Father's name down once again and show you how the Father's name can be none other than Yahuwah. Okay, so now I named this teaching Y.H.W.H, restoring the name, because you have a lot of people out there that believes that the Father's true name is Y.H.W.H. And this is one of the first misconception that has caused confusion all throughout the earth that I'm getting ready to clear up, because you hear a lot of people saying, may Y.H.W.H bless you, or praise Y.H.W.H. And see, the reason why so many people believe that the Father's true name is Y.H.W.H is because, see, most people don't apply themselves to true study and true research, okay? But you always hear people talking about, oh, I'm studying and I'm doing research. So because they have not slowed down and taken the time to come into a simple and basic understanding of the Hebrew language, they believe and just settle for that the Father's name is Y.H.W.H or Y.H.W.H. So now let me clear up this misconception so that hopefully we can free some people that are under this bondage. Now, the first thing that we need to understand whenever it comes down to the Hebrew language is that all Hebrew when written is written using consonants. All Hebrew. Now, of course, they have vowel pointed the modern day Hebrew to let you know where certain vowels go at in certain words, but all Hebrew when written is written using consonants. And the Father's name is no exception to this rule. So we have to understand that whether we was talking about the Father, which true name is Yahuwah, or we're talking about King Jehoshaphat or King Hezekiah or King Solomon or King David, if we was looking at all of those names written in Hebrew, all of those names will be written using consonants. For an example, we'll use somebody like King David for an example, where we know that in Hebrew his name is correctly pronounced as King David. But if we was looking at King David's name in the Hebrew, this is what we would see. So you will basically something to like this effect, okay? My Hebrew ain't all of that, so just bear with me. So in English, this will basically be D, W, D. So basically, my brothers and sisters, we wouldn't refer to King David or King David's name as King DWD. We have to insert the correct Hebrew vowels into these three consonants in order to get the correct pronunciation of what of the word that these three Hebrew consonants are representing. Okay, so the same rules that we will apply to King David or King David's name in order to get the correct name, we have to apply the same thing to the Father's name. We won't just refer to the Father as Y.H.W.H. We have to insert the correct vowels into those four Hebrew consonants in order to get the correct pronunciation of the Father's name. Another example, okay, because I want to make sure that you grasp this before I move on to the next segment, because a lot of people are not grasping this. They think that the Father's name is Y.H.W.H. So now, for an example, we have a lot of people that study on Blue Letter Bible, correct? So now, if you went on Blue Letter Bible, okay, and you tapped on the verse of scripture that was in what we call today the Old Testament or the Tanakh, okay? When you tapped on that verse of scripture, it's going to show you that verse in Hebrew in the translation in English. So on one side, you're going to have Hebrew words, and on the other side, you're going to have the English equivalent to those Hebrew words. So for an example, we'll use a simple word like spirit. So if you tapped on a verse of scripture that had the word spirit in it, this is what you would see. Okay, you will see spirit. And then on the other side, they will show you will see the Hebrew word ruach. Okay, so you'll see spirit on one side, you'll see ruach on the other side. But now if you actually look at the top of the screen at that verse originally written in Hebrew, okay, you're not going to see the word ruach up there. Okay, what you're going to see up there is the resh. You're going to see the resh. You're going to see the wa. And you're going to see the head. Okay, so if we was looking at the top of the screen where the Hebrew is actually written at, this is what you're going to see up top. And of course, they're going to have a vowel point to let you know where certain vowels go. So basically in English, this would be the R, this would be the W, and this would be the CH. So what we have to understand, my brothers and sisters, is that we wouldn't refer to the ruach as the RWCH. We refer to the ruach as the ruach. We have to insert the correct vowels into these three Hebrew consonants in order to get the correct pronunciation of the word that these three consonants are representing. We won't refer to the ruach as the RWCH, just like we don't refer to the Father as Y.H.W.H. And see, these things are easy to grasp, my brothers and sisters, but we have to just take the time to just slow down and come into an accurate knowledge of the truth. See, the problem with most people here in these last days, they have become mentally lazy. They don't want to take the time to think these things out. And this is what we have to do because it makes logical sense when we slow down. Okay? So now that I have firmly established that the Father's true name is not Y.H.W.H., but Y.H.W.H is nothing more than 4 consonants that represents the Father's name, and we have to insert the correct Hebrew vowels in the correct the correct Hebrew vowels in order to get the correct pronunciation and the correct name of the Father. Let's move on to the second part of this teaching. Now, in the first breakdown teaching that I did on the Father's name, I stated that in order to come into the accurate knowledge of what the Father's true name was, all we needed was the scriptures. Now I'm going back and telling you that that statement that I made then was partially true. And the reason why that statement is partially true is because what I come to realize is that the statement would be 100% true if we all spoke the Hebrew language fluently, okay? Because then we wouldn't be debating over what certain letters mean or the pronunciation of certain words, because we would have an understanding of the Hebrew alphabet and Hebrew grammar. But because most of us do not speak Hebrew, then it's necessary for us to come into a simple and basic understanding of the Hebrew language. And the reason why is because what we have to understand is that whenever you begin to start translating and transliterating from one language to another language, you have to understand that within that process, certain things get lost and certain things get added. So if we're talking about coming into the accurate knowledge of what the Father's true name is, then we have to trace everything back to its origin. And this is what we're getting ready to do in the second part of this teaching, because as you know, this 6th Hebrew letter, what we call the Y, has also been at the center of confusion throughout the years. You have people that would tell you that the Y, that letter is Y, which would basically represent or be equivalent to our modern day W. You have certain people that would tell you that that letter is UA, that would be basically equivalent to our modern day U. You have some people that would tell you that that letter is Va, which is basically equivalent to our modern day V. So we're getting ready to trace this letter back to its origin to find out what it truly represents. I'm also going to be in this segment of the teaching, breaking down and clearing up the true original Hebrew vowels, because you have certain people that would tell you that, oh, A is the only original Hebrew vowel. Then you have other teachers out there that are trying to take vowels that were created through the mutation process and pawn them off like they are original vowels. So I'm going to be clearing up all of the confusion surrounding the original Hebrew vowels in this part of the teaching. So now, the first place that we're getting ready to go to find out what this letter truly represented in the Paleo Hebrew alphabet is the Greek. We're going to start in the Greek because, see, the Greek is where all of the confusion begins. Okay? So now, when we open up the history books and we go back into history, the first thing that we're going to find out when it comes to the Greek and the Greek language, the Greeks got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet. So their alphabet is derived from the Phoenician alphabet around the 8th or 9th century BC. So let me put this on the board because I'm getting ready to take you somewhere. So now the Greek alphabet is derived from the Phoenician alphabet around 9th century or 8th century BC. Okay? The Greek alphabet. So after the Greek alphabet was derived from the Phoenician alphabet, you have to understand that throughout the different centuries, the Phoenician alphabet will undergo different changes. So we have to understand, when you go back into history, you'll see different periods like the archaic Greek time period, the classical Greek time period, the Hellenistic Greek time period. But in this lesson today, the only two time periods that we're going to focus on is the archaic Greek and the classical Greek. Okay, so the archaic Greek would have basically been from the archaic Greek would have basically been from 9th century to around 6th century BC. Okay, and then the classical Greek time period would have basically been from around 5th century to around 4th century BC. Okay, that would be the classical time period. So now, if the Greeks got that alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, when they originally got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, how did they transliterate that letter right there? How did they define it in their alphabet? Okay, now when I tell you that that the Greeks got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, what we have to understand is that when we're looking at the father's name up here in what we call the Paleo Hebrew, we have to understand that these are Phoenician characters. Okay, so this is the father's name basically written using Phoenician characters or the Phoenician alphabet. Okay, when you look at the father's name right here in the Aramaic, this is basically the father's name written using the Aramaic alphabet or the Aramaic characters. Okay, when we look at the father's name right here in English, what we're looking at is the father's name written using English letters or the English alphabet. So basically what we're looking at is the father's name transliterated in three different alphabets. You have the Phoenician alphabet, you have the Aramaic alphabet, you have the English alphabet. So these characters up here are Phoenician characters. So if the Greeks got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, how did they transliterate this letter right here? And the answer is simple. They transliterated it as the digamma. Okay, the digamma, which in Greek this would have been its symbol, and this represented the W. Okay, the consonantal form of the Y, and they also transliterated it as upsilon, which in the Greek it would have been a Y-looking shape, and it represented U. So basically what we have to understand, my brothers and sisters, is that when the Greeks first initially got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, they recognized the Y as a double letter. Okay, and they transliterated it as the digamma, which would have been the consonantal form of this of the Y, and then they also transliterated it as the U, okay, which would have been the vowel that the Y can take on. So what ended up happening is around the classical time period, we see the digamma disappear off the scene, okay? And today, they have changed it to, I believe, stigma is what it is now. Stigma. So anyway, what ended up happening was around the classical time period, they removed the digamma and then they eventually changed it to stigma. And the reason why, from my investigation, was that the Greeks really didn't have no use for the consonantal form of the Y, which would have been the W, is what the digamma originally was and what it represented. Okay, so they basically, around the classical time period, they did away with the digamma and then they eventually changed it to what is now stigma. So what you have to understand is that this is where people don't understand is because they get lost in the history. They go back to certain time periods like the classical Greek time period or the Greco-Roman time period, and when they look at the alphabet, they don't see the digamma because by then, of course, they have already removed it from the alphabet and changed it. So this is where they get lost in the sauce. And so when they look at the upsilon, they say, okay, well, the upsilon came from the Y, so they say, okay, well, that letter is U. But they don't go back far enough to where the Greek first originally got the alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet and see that they transliterated this as a double letter, as W being the consonantal form that it takes on in the U. So this is why in my past teachings, I let the teachers and the scholars out there that's telling you that this letter is U, I let them know that they're not going to get around the Y because there is a consonantal form of this letter right here, which is in our modern day alphabet W. Exactly as the Greeks recognized it when they first got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet. So when I told you that the Greek is where all of the confusion began, see, well, we have to understand what the Greek alphabet. The Greek alphabet is the first alphabet that separated the consonants from the vowels that these consonants could take on, okay, because they originally got the alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet. So what we have to understand, they were the first ones that separated and made a letter for the consonants, and they also made a letter for the vowels. So what we have to understand is that when we go back and we look at the Hebrew language and the Hebrew alphabet, we have to understand that when we're looking at the Hebrew alphabet consists of what? All consonants, right? So what we have to understand is, although the Hebrew alphabet consists of all consonants, you have to understand you have letters that are double letters that can take on vowels. So basically what the Greeks did, they just simplified everything and said, okay, well, this letter is a double letter. We got a letter for the consonant and we got a letter for the vowel. So we have to understand that when we go back to the original Hebrew, we have to understand that the three original vowels is A, I, and U. Okay? These are the three original vowels, and languages like Aramaic, Arabic, Syriac will attest to this because A, I, and U are the three original vowels in all the Semitic languages. Okay? Now you have teachers out here that will tell you that A is the only original ancient Hebrew vowel. We have to understand that A is only one of the three original Hebrew vowels. How do we know that? It's simple. What we have to understand is that the Hebrews got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, just like the Aramaics got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet. Okay? Arabic is a more newer language, but the Arabic language also traces back to the Phoenician alphabet because it's believed that the Arabic alphabet comes from the Nabatean alphabet, which traces back to the Aramaic and to the Phoenician alphabet. Okay, so what you have to understand is that in all of these Semitic languages, they recognize this Y as a double letter. They recognize it as W and they recognize it as U. Okay, so if all of these alphabets are derived from the Phoenician alphabet, just like the Hebrew alphabet is derived from the Phoenician alphabet, why would all these other alphabets recognize the Y as a double letter, but then the Hebrews do not recognize it as a double letter? So when teachers tell you that they're lying, it's insufficient evidence. Because when we look at all of the other languages that got their alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, they recognize the Y as a double letter. So why wouldn't the Hebrews recognize it as a double letter? Even the Greeks, when they got the alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, even they recognize it as a double letter. So why would teachers be telling you that A is the only original ancient Hebrew vowel? But see, when people hear ancient, they get lost in that. And it's like, oh, they're talking about the ancient. I'm taking you into the Ancient of Days. I'm taking you to 900, 800 BC. This is what we have to grasp, my brothers and sisters. So at this point in time, they recognize this letter as a double letter. So why wouldn't the Hebrews recognize it as a double letter in their alphabet? So we have to understand that those are lies. And these different languages will attest to that because all of those alphabets came from the Phoenician alphabet. It is very easy to grasp. So what we have to understand is that the Greeks created the E and the O. Okay, the vowels E and O are not original Hebrew vowels. These are mutations. The vowel letter E and O came from the Greeks suppressing the true original Hebrew vowels in order to get those letters. Okay, those vowels are not original vowels. Those came by them suppressing the true vowels in order to get those vowels. This is what we have to understand. So what the Greeks basically did is that when we go back, they created this system called the Mater Lectionis, okay? And basically what this system did was it showed you the consonants that they had separated that could also take on vowels, okay? Because what we have to understand is that when you look at languages like Hebrew and Aramaic and all the different Semitic languages, okay, like Arabic and stuff, you have to understand that in those alphabets, they do not have separate letters that represent the consonants and the vowels. Okay, the consonant you have one letter which is a consonant that represents the consonant and the vowel. Okay, this is why when you look at modern day Hebrew and stuff, they have vowel pointed to Hebrew and Arabic to let you know what certain vowels appear at. Because there is no separate letter that separates the consonants from the vowel, like we have in English, which came to us from the Greek. So this is what we have to understand. So when the Greeks created this system called the Mater Lectionis, what this basically did was shows you the consonants that they took and extracted the vowels from. So basically what they did was they took Yod and they changed it to iota. They took the Hey and they changed it to epsilon. They took the Y and changed it to upsilon. And they also took the Aleph and changed it to alpha. But in regards to the Father's name, where we know another Hey appears right here, we know that that would be epsilon, right? So basically, this is what Josephus was talking about when he said in his writings that the Father's name was 4 vowels, okay? Because remember, he told you that he was writing to please his Greek audience. So when he said that the Father's name was 4 vowels, they understood that they had changed, they had basically abstracted the vowels from these letters, okay? So this is why he said that the Father's name was 4 vowels. This is why when you go into your King James 1611 Bible, when you look at the false name Jesus, you don't see it with a J, you see it with the I there, right? Because technically it should be a Yod there, but they changed it to an iota. Okay? So this is why you see I in that translation of the Bible for the Yod. So this is what Josephus was talking about. So then after the Mater Lectionis is the system that the Greeks created. And then out of this system, the Mater Lectionis, will come the Tiberian system. And the Tiberian system is the system that the Masoretes created, okay? Because they said that the Mater Lectionis was not sufficient. So basically all the Masoretes did was remodify the system that the Greeks had created. This is what we have to understand. So when the teachers tell you, oh, we can only get the vowels through the vowel pointing system that the Masoretes created, you have to understand that what the Greeks established, they established way before the vowel pointing system that the Masoretes created was even on the scene. When we go back to 900 BC, we see that the Greeks originally recognized this letter as a double letter, as W being a consonantal form and upsilon being the U, the vowel that it can take on. This is what we have to grasp. You see, what people don't understand whenever it comes down to this vowel pointing system that the Masoretes created, it's no different than everything else that's going on in the earth, okay? We have to understand when we look at our English Bibles, we know that scholars have tampered with the word. We have to separate the light from the darkness. And I know that this is hard for most people to do, because most people don't look at the evidence with pure eyes. They're looking at it to fit whatever agenda it is that they're trying to push, or the ideologies that they have. They're not truly seeking for truth. So most people will say, oh, the Bible's been tampered with, they did this, they did that, let's just throw it away. No. We separate what the scholars have done from what is actually truth. And this is the same thing we have to do when we're dealing with the vowel pointing system that the Masoretes created or basically remodified. Because what we have to understand is that the vowel pointing system was not created for the Hebrews. They did not need that. They did not create that for them. It would be no different than if I was in China today and somebody wrote a letter in English to China. And the Chinese people that were not bilingual were trying to read that letter. The only way that they could read that letter if they knew English grammar. So that means they would have to know what a noun is, what a verb is, what a pronoun is, what an adjective is, how to pronounce certain letters or whatnot. They would have to know all this in order to read that letter. Now, if they brought the letter to me and I was in China, I don't need all of that English grammar because I know how to read English. So I don't need that. So this is what we have to understand about the things that we have to come into the understanding when we're dealing with the Hebrew language. Whenever you take time and just go on the internet, go look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. When you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, you're going to see that the scrolls that they're digging up and finding over there in the Middle East, none of that Hebrew is vowel pointed. And the reason why is because the people that wrote the scrolls, they spoke Hebrew, they wrote Hebrew, they understood Hebrew. The people it was going to, they spoke Hebrew and they could read Hebrew. So they don't need no vowel point system to know what vowels go here and what vowels go there. This is for people that do not speak Hebrew. This would be no different than you writing a letter. When you write a letter or text somebody or email somebody, you don't write them a letter and then put a sidebar in the letter and say, okay, this is a pronoun, this is a noun. You don't do it. Why? Because everybody in this nation speak English, or most people. So you don't need all of that grammar rules whenever you're writing. This is what we have to grasp. So when we're dealing with this vowel point system that the Masoretes basically just remodify, we have to understand that A, I, and U are the three original vowels. E and O are mutations. They came by them suppressing the true vowels in order to get those vowels. Because when we trace the E and the O back to its origin, they're not original vowels. We see that they came from them suppressing the true vowels to get those vowels. So whenever you hear people saying Elohim or El, you have to understand that's modern day Hebrew. If we're talking original Hebrew, we're talking Elohim, or we're talking the All, not no El or no Elohim. That's Greek. This is what we have to grasp. When you hear people saying Shalom, and you see them spelling Shalom with the O, we have to understand that's Greek. The Greeks created that. If we're talking original Hebrew, we're talking Shalom. Because we know ain't no O in the original Hebrew because the O came from the U. This is what we have to understand. See, the people over there in modern day Israel, what you have to understand is that they speak Yiddish, okay? What is Yiddish? Yiddish is nothing more than original Hebrew mixed with German, mixed with Aramaic, mixed with Latin. They speak a mud language. So this is what we have to understand, that not speaking the original language. Some of the stuff that they say are original words, but the other stuff are not. Because it's a blend of everything. This is what we have to grasp. And it's simple. And I know that this is hard for most people to do. So now, the last language that we're going to touch on before I move on into the last part of this teaching is the Latin. Okay? Now, I know that most people may refer to this alphabet that we use today as the English alphabet, right? But technically the alphabet that we use today is called the Latin alphabet, okay? It would have been the same alphabet that the Romans used, okay? And of course, it's not the exact same because it's been modifications done throughout the years, but essentially it's the same alphabet, okay? So the alphabet that we use today is called technically the Latin alphabet, and the Latin alphabet came in or is derived from the Greek alphabet, okay? So you see how we tracing everything back to its origin. The alphabet that we use today, which is technically called the Latin alphabet, that alphabet came from the Greek alphabet. The Greek alphabet came from where? The Phoenician alphabet, okay? So it's simple. So the Latin alphabet, just like the Greek alphabet, when it first came on the scene in 7th century BC, it would also undergo changes and modifications. Like you have the archaic Latin, you have classical Latin, you have late Latin, you have Renaissance Latin, medieval Latin, new Latin. So you got all these different periods where the Latin alphabet was undergoing modification and changes, okay? So now we spoke about the W, we spoke about the U. The last letter that we're getting ready to deal with is the V, because you have some people that's telling that this letter right here is Va, okay? So the only way to find out if that's true, we have to trace the letter V back to its origin, okay? So when we trace the letter V back to its origin, we trace it back to Latin, okay? This is where the V comes from. This is where it originates at. It originates in the Latin. So now, when we look up the letter V to see where it came from, they will tell you that it represents what? It comes from the Phoenician Y, okay? This is what they tell you. So the first thing that we have to grasp is that if this letter came directly, if the letters got the alphabet directly from the Phoenician alphabet, then we can say, okay, well, the letter V means this letter up here, which is Y, means V. But the Latins did not get the alphabet directly from the Phoenician alphabet. History tells us that the Latin got their alphabet is derived from the Greek alphabet. So if they're telling us that this came from the Phoenician Y, and we know that the Latins did not get the alphabet from the Phoenician alphabet, the only way to trace this letter back to the Y would have to be through the Greek. Because the Latin got their alphabet from where? The Greek. So the next question that we have to ask ourselves is, what did this letter represent in the Greek language? This is the only way that we can trace it back. And so when we see what this letter represented in the Greek language, we see that it came from the upsilon, okay? So now when we go into the Greek and we look at the upsilon, we see that we don't see no V here. We see that for upsilon, and we look at the Greek character right here, we see that it was U, okay? And when we look at the digamma, which is the consonantal form of the Y, we see W. And we know that this is the correct transliteration of this letter because when we look in all the other Semitic alphabets, we see that they recognize this as a double letter. So this is where we separate the V and we leave the V in the Latin, and we know that the V originated in the Latin because there is no V in the Greek right here where they're tracing it back to. So this Phoenician Y could never be V because it originated in the Latin. And the Latin got the alphabet from the Greek. And so when they say that this represented upsilon, we don't see no V here for the letter upsilon. So this is what we have to grasp. The Latins are the one that created the V. And basically what they did was, if you look at the upsilon, this is what it looks like. All they did was they chopped the stem off and they used the V to represent the upsilon and also basically the digamma, the consonantal form that the Y would take on. Okay, so this is why when you go back to around like the Greco-Roman period, you see how they use the V to represent the vowel sound that the Y would take on, and also the consonant that the Y would take on. Okay, so when you look at the artifacts that they found, like when you look at names like Julius, you'll see it spelled like IV. And when they created the V, the V was used for the U sound or the U sound that the upsilon made, okay? So what we have to understand is that throughout the different centuries, this began to cause confusion, okay? So what they would eventually do is, they would eventually bring the U in, okay? and put it in its proper place and use it as the correct letter and the correct sound that we get from the upsilon, and they used the V as a consonant still. So they had the U for the vowel, and they was using the V for the consonant form of this letter. Okay, so now then around the 1500s, the W pop on the scene in the alphabet, and this is where a lot of more confusion comes in, that because in the first breakdown teaching that I did, I had this guy comment on my on the video. He was basically like, and I'm just paraphrasing him, he was like, oh, very good teaching, but you know that the W was originally a U, okay? And then he tried to direct me to this false page that this guy got up with a mixed information, partial truths in there. And the name of that website was called, I believe, Custom Fossils or Fossil Customs or whatever. And on there, the guy is basically saying that the Y is originally a U, and that the W only came on the scene around the 1500s. Okay, and see, what you have to understand, see, these are teachers that create these stumbling blocks, okay, because they don't give people the full truth. Okay, well, we have to understand, because it's really simple to grasp. The Latin got their alphabet around 7th century BC from the Greeks. That would have been around when? The archaic time period, right? So they knew when they got their alphabet from the Greeks that this Y was a double letter, okay? And how do we know that? Because when they first was originally using the V before the W or the U was on the scene, they used it for what? The vowel and the consonant. So they knew that this was a double letter. So now, once the V started becoming confusing, and they originally brought the original letters in that this letter truly stands for, this is where the confusion started. And they say, well, oh, the W didn't come on the scene until the 1500s, where that is partially true, because the W did not, around the 1500s, the W just basically became universal. And basically what the Latins did was they reintroduced the W, because the W had already existed, as we see here in the Greek. So because the Greeks had no use for the consonantal form of the Y, and they removed and changed the digamma to stigma, the Latins already knew that this was a double letter, because they got their alphabet from the Greek. So because they didn't have use for the consonantal form of the W, the Latins did. And so this is what we see around the 1500s, them reintroducing the W, which was already there in the Greek. You see what I'm saying? But people just not going back far enough. Another thing where the brother was wrong at, what we have to understand, is that if you really go back into the history, what you're going to notice is that although they made the W universal around the 1500s, you have to understand that the W was already in use before then. You see, when you go back into the history and you look at the Old English alphabet, which would have been the language that they used in England, and they said that the Old English alphabet came around 5th, 7th century AD or whatever. When you look at the alphabet, which is derived from the Latin alphabet, you don't see no V or no U in there. You see the W in there, because they understood that the W was a double letter. And this puts us right around the time of what? The Masoretic text, because they said the Masoretes wrote the Masoretic text around, 6th, 7th century to around 9th century or year 1000, somewhere in there. So they understood that this letter in its consonantal form was W, and that from that you get the U, because it's a double letter. So this is what we have to grasp. It's simple. The W already existed in the Greek, and the Latins knew this, because why? They got their alphabet from the Greeks. But see, people are not doing true research. They're not going back far enough. They going back to the 1500s, said, see, this is when the W first came on. But they don't know that the W was already on the scene in the Greek, dating all the way back to 900 BC. It's simple. This is why we have to trace everything back to its origin. So I just established that this letter right here is not Va. This letter is Va. And as I just explained to you, the people in modern day Israel, they speak Yiddish. And Yiddish is what? Yiddish is nothing more than a mix of what? Original Hebrew with Aramaic, with German, and with Latin. The V is Latin. This is why they tell you this is Va. But when we trace the Va back to its origin, it stops in the Latin. It can't go no farther than that, because they got their alphabet from the Greek, and we don't see no V for this letter in the Greek. It's simple. Okay? So now, Now that I have firmly established that this letter right here is Y and that A, I, and U are the three original vowels, the E and the O came from mutations and the suppression of the true three original vowels. Let's move on into the last part of this teaching. And in the last part of this teaching, I'm just going to break the Father's name down, and then I'm going to let you go. Yeah, it feels good to be in the truth, man. Feels good. Honestly. Now, let's open up the scriptures. And of course, you know where we're going. We're going to Exodus chapter 3. We're going to Exodus chapter 3. And we're going to start reading at verse number 13. It says, and Moshe said unto Elohim, behold, when I come unto the children of Y.H.W.H, and shall say unto them, the Elohim of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say, what is his name? What should I say unto them? And Elohim said unto Moshe, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Y.H.W.H, I am has sent me unto you. Okay, so we see here in verse number 14, he said, I am that I am. Okay, so let's get that on the board. He said, I am that I am. Okay, so this is what he said, I am that I am. So now if we're looking at this in the Hebrew, it's a higher. Ashar, Ahaya. Right? So if we're looking at this in the Hebrew, this is what was said at the burning bush. Ahaya, Ashar, Ahaya. Okay? So now if we're looking at this in the Hebrew, though, this is what we're looking at. And once again, I don't write Hebrew every day, so just bear with me. Okay, so if we was looking at this in the Hebrew, in the original Hebrew text, this is what we would see right here. Okay, so let's put that up there. This is Exodus 3:14. Now, let's jump down to verse 15. It says, and Elohim said moreover unto Moshe, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Y.H.W.H, Yahuwah Elohim of your father. So right there when it says the Lord God, we know that in Exodus 3:15, this is what appears there. Okay, the Y.H.W.H, which would be Y.H.W.H, right? So now, the reason why I actually put the Hebrew up here this time, I put it up there to make a point, because you got a lot of people out there that believe that the Father's name is I am that I am, or Ahaya Asher Haya, or you got some people that say, oh, the Father's name is Ahaya. So to correctly interpret this, we see that if we look at verse 14, this is the Hebrew that's in verse number 14. And if we look at verse number 15, this is the Hebrew that's there. So we see that this right here is not showing up there. So both of these verses are in conflict with one another. So how do we correctly interpret what is being said here in verse 14 and verse 15? And it's simple. You have to understand in verse 14, he's given Moshe the meaning of the Father's name. And then in verse 15, he's proclaiming the actual name. You have to understand that when you go into the Hebrew, every Hebrew name that is recorded that we can go to in our Strong's Concordance, every Hebrew name has a meaning to it. Every name. For instance, if we go into the Strong's Concordance and we look up the name Job, we look up Job, which in Hebrew is actually Ayub. Okay? Ayub, which basically means hated. Okay? So when we go into the Hebrew and we look up everybody name has a meaning to it. So we have to understand that Job's name in Hebrew is Ayub, and it would basically mean hated. So this is what we're getting here in verse 3:14 and 3:15. The Father name is no different. His name has to have a meaning to it, and this is the meaning right here. Ahaya Asher Ahaya. The self-existent one, or to cause to exist. And then we see down in 3:15 the name was proclaimed. So this is beautiful what we're seeing here, because what we're seeing right here is that the Father has now locked us in. Okay? Whatever name, whatever Hebrew vowels that we insert into these 4 Hebrew consonants, the name that we come up with has to match the meaning of the name. You cannot create a name and then the name has no meaning with the meaning of the name. This is what we have to understand. If you alter any word in Job's name, like you had a teacher telling you that A is the only original Hebrew vowel, if you take this Y out of there, which we know the Y is representing the U here, you have to understand that this changes the name now. The name is no longer Ayub, and the name no longer means hated. If we look at Isaiah's name, which is Y.H.W.H, we know that Y.H.W.H means, Isaiah's name means salvation of Yahuwah, or saved of or by Yahuwah. Because when we break the name down, we have Yasha and we have Yahu. We know Yasha means what? Saved or salvation. We know Yahu means what? He is Yahuwah. So we have to understand that the name has to match the meaning of the meaning of the name. You can't have one without the other. This is what we have to grasp. So right here, what we have to understand is that Yah is giving us the meaning of the Father's name right here. And in verse 15, he's proclaiming the name. So the name that we come up with down here at verse number 15, it has to mean what was said in verse 14. So we have to understand that the Father has locked us in right here. And everything has to match up. You cannot create a name that don't mean what Yah said that the name meant. This is what we have to understand. And it's simple. Okay? 3rd graders can understand this. The meaning of the name has to match the name. It's simple. Okay? So now, as I told you in the first breakdown teaching that I did, Yah is the one that unlocks the mystery to what the Father's true name is. So let's put Yah up here. We have Yah. Okay? Which we get that from the Yod and the Hey. We can find it at 3050. So now, this is how Yah unlocks the mystery to what the Father's name is. Now, if we go back up, let's go back into the scriptures to verse number 13, Exodus 3:13. It says, and Moshe said unto Elohim. So now who's he speaking to? He's speaking to Elohim, right? It says, and he said unto Elohim, behold, when I come unto the children of Y.H.W.H, and shall say unto them, the Elohim of your fathers have sent me unto you, and they shall say to me. Now listen, he says, what is his name, and what should I say to them? So we see 2 question marks there, right? Because he's asked 2 questions right here, right? Now you have to understand that in verse 14, he gave 2 separate answers. This is what we have to grasp. Moshe asked 2 questions in verse number 13. We see 2 question marks, right? In verse 14, he gave them 2 different answers. This is what we have to grasp. In verse number 14, he says, and Elohim said unto Moshe, I am that I am. Okay, so he's answering the first question when he says, the Elohim of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say unto me, what is his name? So he's letting Moshe know, I am that I am. And then it says, and he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Y.H.W.H, I am have sent me. So he gave them 2 different answers. He gave them the Father's name. He gave them the meaning of the Father's name, which was Ahaya Asher Ahaya. And then he's saying, Ahaya is sending you. So what we have to understand when we clearly go back into, let's just stay in the book of Exodus and just jump back up to, we still in verse number 3. Let's just go to verse number 2 so I can break this down, because see, people, they do not grasp this. Okay, now listen, verse number 2, Exodus chapter 3, it says, and the Malach of Yahuwah appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. So we see that a Malach has appeared in this burning bush, okay, in the flame of the fire. Now grasp, it says, and he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moshe said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. And when Yahuwah, so we don't see Yahuwah Elohim right here, we just see Yahuwah. So this is speaking about who? The Father. It says, and when Yahuwah saw that he turned aside to see, Elohim called unto him out of the midst of the bush. So we just saw that that Moshe helped us understand that a Malach of Yahuwah appeared in a burning bush. Now it's saying that Elohim called out of the, it says, Elohim called unto him out of the midst of the bush. So who's in the bush? We know ain't nobody seen the Father. So it's speaking about the Malach that appeared at the burning bush. This is Elohim. And when we understand that Elohim is plural for the all, this is helping us understand that two people on the scene. So this is what we're seeing. It says when Yahuwah, it says, and when Yahuwah saw one person, the Father, turned aside to see, Elohim called to him out of the burning bush, out of the midst of the bush. So this is what we have to grasp. Who's in the bush? The Malach. So the Malach is, he's referring to the Malach now, is Elohim. And when we jump over to verse 14, who's speaking? It says, and Elohim said unto Moshe, I am that I am, giving him the first answer to the first question he asked. And then he said, this shall I say to the children of Yashrael, I am has sent me unto you. So he's letting Moshe know, I'm sending you. It's simple. Third graders can grasp this. But you got grown adults out here that don't grasp that Yah is the Son. This is what we have to understand. This is who Moshe is talking to. The Malach that appeared at the burning bush, who is referred to as Elohim. And we see right here, he's letting them know that his name is Yah, because he said, Ahaya has sent me unto you. So when we go into Exodus chapter 15, verse 2, and we see where Moshe first proclaims the name Yah and Yahuwah, we understand that Yah comes from Ahaya. So once we understand that Ahaya, when he's saying, I am has sent me to you, this is what unlocks the mystery. Because now we know the first part of the name is Yah. Because we know that you got Ahaya there 3 times in that verse. So he said Ahaya Eshahaya. And when he said I am has sent me to you, we know that that is also Ahaya. And we understand that is Yah. So now we have the first part of the Father's name. This is Yah. It's simple, my brothers and sisters. So now we have Yah. Okay, so now that we have Yah, you know, the Son has unlocked this mystery for us, okay? Because as he told us in the in what we call the day of the New Testament, he led us to understand that nobody can come to the Father but through me. And we see right here, it was also the case in the Ancient of Days. Okay, so now that we have Yah, we done unlocked the first part of the Father's name. We know that he said Ahaya in the back, right? So we have to look to see, well, what word could fit in here and mean the same as Ahaya, because we see the Y and the Hey back here in the back part of the Father's name. Okay, so when we look through the Hebrew language, the only other word that we can find is the Hebrew 1933, which is Hawa. Okay, and Hawa basically means the same as Ahaya. It means the, you know, self-existent one, or to cause to exist. Okay, so now we understand that Hawa is also interchangeable with Yah. We know that we have the back part of the Father's name. Hold on, let me do this. Hold up. Bear with me. Okay, so then we go ahead and just put the correct Hebrew vowel in there. So now we got Yahweh now, okay? So at this point right here, we understand and know that a vowel has to come we got a vowel that we have to put in there. How do we know that? Because Hebrew grammar tells us that when a hey falls in the middle of a word, a vowel has to come after that. We understand that we got two root words right here, Yah and Y. We understand that what? That it has to make a 3-syllable word. Okay, this is what we have to understand. We have 4 consonants there. Yo, hey, why, hey. We understand that that also lets us know that we have to have 3 syllables. And within those 3 syllables, we have to have 3 vowels. Okay, so how do we cross-reference this with what was said in the scriptures? Because when we look at Yahweh, now that we see that we have a high and a higher, we see that he said Ashar. So we know that a vowel has to go there now. Okay, and the scriptures back that up. Okay, so now we have to find a word that will mean the same as 8. Excuse me. We have to find a word that will mean the same as the Hebrew word Ashar, which is the Hebrew 834, and fit in there. Okay, and so we have to understand the only vowels that we're working with is A, I, and U. Okay, because these are the 3 original vowels. The E and the O came by the Greeks suppressing the original Hebrew vowels in order to get those vowels. So those are not original vowels. Okay, so we have to use the original vowels to find out what the Father's original name is, and these are the only vowels that we're going to use. Okay, so these are the only 3 vowels. Only one of those vowels could go in here, and to make it even easier, we're gonna get rid of the I, because although we know the I is an original vowel, we see none of the false names out here with an I right there. So we just gonna get rid of the I right now, and it's gonna either be A or U. Okay, it's simple. So now when we go through the Hebrew language to see what word could possibly fit in there and mean the same as Ashar, we go to the Hebrew 1931, and we see the word who there. Okay, which basically means the same as that of who. Okay, and so when we look at the Y right here, and we understand that the Y is a double letter, that it can take on a consonantal form and the a vowel, U being a vowel, we understand that this letter can be nothing but U. When we see that the U is one of the original Hebrew vowels, we know that this is the vowel that goes there. It's simple, and it fits right in. Okay, and when we put the U in there, we look at the who, we have everything that was said in verse 14 in the name that we are getting when we apply the true original Hebrew vowels to these 4 Hebrew consonants. So we have to understand that the Father name could be nothing but Yahuwah. Okay, if we put an A in there, we cannot find no word in the Hebrew language that means ha. Okay, if we put an A there, we can find no word in the Hebrew language by ha that means anything. So this is how we know that A would not go there. It's simple. We have everything in the name of Yahuwah. We have Ahaya, Ashar, Ahaya. What was said at the burning bush. We have the complete meaning of the Father's name in his name right here, transliterated in the English. It's simple, my brothers and sisters. This is the true name of the Father, and it's firm. So now, the last thing that I want to do before I close up this teaching is I want to look at the false names again. Okay, because in my first teaching I went through the false names, and I'm gonna go through them again because it seems that some believers are being shook up by some of the false names out here. Okay, so the first name that we're going to start with is the name Yahweh. Okay. Yahweh. Now, I told you in the first breakdown teaching that I did on the Father's name that Yahweh was a false name, and I see that this name is shaking some people up. Okay, and so I'm still standing firm on what I told you in the first teaching when I said that Yahweh is a false name. So we get ready to look closer at the name, and I'm just going to prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that the name is false. Now, what you would notice with all these different Yahweh teachers out there is that they tell you that the only way to come into the accurate knowledge of what these 4 letters mean, all we have to do is add an A. They say A is the original Hebrew vowel, ancient Hebrew vowel, okay? And they say that all we have to do is add that A to every consonant of the Hebrew alphabet, because we understand that the Hebrew alphabet is all consonants, okay? But we have consonants that can take on double letters as vowels. But they say all we have to do is add an A, because A is the original vowel. So all we have to do is add that vowel A to all of the Hebrew consonants, and this is all we need in order to get what the Father's name is. So basically what they're saying, when you have the Yod there, all you do is add an A to it and get Yah. Or, you know, the Dalet, you just add a A to the D and you get Dot, and so forth for the whole alphabet, right? So now grasp. It's a brother on YouTube, right? And I believe his TV station is the tribe of Yehuda Teach, okay? Or the tribe of Judah Teach, right? Okay? And he's a Yahweh teacher, okay? And he has a teaching that he put out titled The Ancient Names of God. This is the name of the video. And so it's about, you know, I believe it's about a 2-hour long video or whatever. And he's trying to tell the people and break down to the people how the Father name is Yahweh. Now, the most critical point out of that almost 2-hour teaching that he did was around the 30 and 40-minute mark, when he broke the name Yahweh down. And I watched it closely, and what he did, it was like a magician trick, right? And so what he did was this. He said, you got Yah. He took the Yod. He put Yah up there, and then when he got to the Hey, he put Ha up there, and then when he got to the Y, this is what he did. He said, and then you got Y. And I was like, hold on. I said, now, you know, and this is why you have to have logical sense, my brothers and sisters. And see, most people, they don't have this. If you telling me that all we have to do is add an A to every Hebrew consonant, what happened up here with the last part of the Father's name? Technically, you should have had an A right here. For the Y, you should have had an A, and for the Hey, you should have also had an A right there. Y Ha is what you should have had according to what you kicking. You see what I'm saying? But see, people don't grasp this. They sitting back clapping and thumbing it up. Oh, good job. And see, I'm not moved because a teacher have, you know, thousands of likes or, you know, thousands of followers, because all this shows me is that you have thousands and thousands of people that are in darkness. You can't do this. You cannot create your own Hebrew grammar as you choose. You can't do that. Everything that I gave you today, I gave you fact, and you can trace everything that I gave you back to its origin. And how we know that the Father's name is Yahuwah, because the same people that's telling you this and giving you the Hebrew grammar, they don't even follow this. And when they're breaking the Father's name down and trying to present it to the people, they don't even follow these grammar rules. So we know that this is the Father's name. What this brother did would be no difference than you telling somebody, tell me the ABCs, and they go A, B, C, M, N, O, P. You can't do that. What happened to D and E? How did you jump from D and E all the way to M and N? You can't do that. If what you're saying is that we have to add a A to every Hebrew consonant, you should have an A behind that high right there. So why these teachers, these Yahweh teachers out here doing all of this teaching, forget all that other stuff you're talking about, do a teaching on that and explain that. How did you go from Yah to Ha to Y? Now I want to see if they're going to do a teaching on that and break that down, because there is no explanation for that. It's folly. Now, let's continue to break this false name down. So now if they say, well, okay, we getting Y from 1933, well, we know we can go in the Strong's Concordance and look at 1933 and see that Y do come from Ha-Y, okay? But when we go into the Strong's Concordance, we can't find this Yah-Ha there. Where is that at? You see what I'm saying? See, this is what we have to grasp, my brothers and sisters. We have to use logical sense. Where is this at in the Strong's Concordance? It's not there. You can't find it. So if we can go in the Strong's Concordance and find Y, we should be able to go in there and find Yah-Ha. You can't find it. Okay? So now, if they say, well, we're taking Yah 3050, and we're adding it to Ha-Wah, which is 1933. Now you're playing Jedi mind tricks, because you cannot take the name and attach it to the meaning of the name. You cannot do that. Okay, that would be like you saying, we know that Yah is a higher, right? This would be like you taking this out and putting Yah there, because you know Yah means a higher. You cannot do that. Every which way that you look with this false name is false. At the end of the day, when we break it down, all you have here is Yah and You have Yah and you have Y. You can't explain this high in the middle at the end of the day. This is what it is. Ain't no A that go there because there is no Hebrew word that we can look up that is called Ha. You see what I'm saying? There is no word. So you have to understand this is why Yahweh is a false name. And I'm standing on it. And I'm proving it to you. The scriptures say we ought to prove all things. So you tell them Yahweh teachers, the Yahweh followers that's going to come through and view this teacher, tell those teachers to do a teaching on that and explain how you went from Yah to Ha, and then you jump straight to Y and you didn't put another A behind that hey right there. Explain that. And then the brother gonna say, oh, he was talking about the vowel point system that the Masoretes created, and said, and went into some book, and they're gonna say, I'll just say we just get rid of it. This is the problem. You don't dictate your own Hebrew rules and grammars as you go. You cannot do that. Everything that I'm giving you has been laid down and established, and everything I'm giving you is fact. Everything I gave you today, you can trace back. Everything. All it do is you take time for you to sit down and look these things up. All of this stuff can be traced back. This stuff that they telling you, can none of this stuff be traced back? Archaeologists has not found no artifact nowhere in the Middle East of a civilization that had an alphabet that had all A's. No artifacts, nothing is found on that. No scrolls, no nothing. It's false. It's a false name. So while people sitting around thumbing this stuff up, you tell those Yahweh teachers, do a teaching on that. I want to see the breakdown on that. How did you say that all you got to do is just add A to every consonant and then you jump from Yah to Ha to Y? Where your other A at? Okay, explain that. Okay, because we got everything that we need in the Father's name down here. Okay, now, next name, real quickly, Yahweh. And as I told you in the first teaching, Yahweh is nothing more than the worship of Jupiter. When we look at the name, Way is not even a Hebrew word. The E comes from Greek. You don't have a vowel right here. And, even if I do count that as a root word, all you have is two root words. You don't have a three-syllable word there. It's false. When I told you that Yahweh was a worship of Jupiter, all you have to do is look. When you look Yahweh up and it takes you to Jupiter, you can cross-reference with the scriptures. When you go into the Maccabees and you see during the days and times of the Greeks, with Alexander and Antiochus, how Antiochus went in Yahuwah's temple and defiled his temple with swine flesh and, was killing people that did not want to follow the law. You have to understand that they was worshiping Jupiter. It's a pagan Greek deity. The worship of the planet Jupiter. This is where Yahweh comes from. This is what we have to grasp. And this is why the Sanhedrin uses this name. Because when the Greeks went in and took over Yahuwah's temple, this is who they were worshiping. Jupiter. Yahweh. False name. Now, you know that I also had a thing with this name because this is one of the closest counterfeits of the Father's name. Yahuwah, and if you grasp everything that I explained to you in the second part of the teaching, you will understand why this is an incorrect transliteration of the Father's name. The people that call on his name, they say, oh, it's the same name, but it's not. You saying Yahuwah, and the Father's name is Yahuwah. Okay, this is what we have to grasp, and it's very simple to understand. When you go into the Hebrew, okay, we understand that the Hebrew alphabet consists of all consonants. There is no letter that represents the vowels and the consonants. This is why in modern day Hebrew, they have vowel pointing to let you know where certain vowels go. Because the consonants, there are certain consonants that represent consonants and vowels. So the U comes from the consonant W. Okay, because we have to understand that the Hebrew alphabet is all consonants. So in order to get the U, you have to take from the consonantal form of the Y in order to get that. See, the U could never represent the W because the W is the U is coming from the W. This is why in English it's called the W. In Greek it was called what? The digamma, because it was two gammas. And it's very simple to understand. It will be no difference if you had a $10 bill. That $10 bill could represent the $5 bill. Why? Because you can take 5 from the $10 bill and get 5. But the $5 bill could never represent the $10 bill because you need another 5 to get the 10. This is what we have to understand. This is why when you look up names with the Y in there and you see the UW, like some people just say, well, Yahoo with the U, they don't put the W there. But this is the correct transliteration because we have to grasp the Hebrew alphabet consists of all consonants. The vowels are coming from the consonants. So what you have to understand, in English, we have the letters that represent those consonants and also the vowels that those consonants would take on. So this is why when we correctly transliterate the name as Yahuwah, we can put the correct vowels in there because we have the vowels, the letter vowels in our alphabet that represent the vowels that these double letters is taking on. So you have to get the U from the W. The U could never represent the W because you need a double U to get the U from the U from the W. This is what we have to understand. It's simple, my brothers and sisters. False name. It's a false translation, a transliteration, false for another name. It's false. Okay? This is the correct transliteration of the Father's name, Yahuwah. When you see the W there, this is letting you know that the consonant is there. This is what this represents, and you're getting the U from the W. Without the W, you can't get the U. Because why? The W is it comes from the W, and this is a technical term that they have, and you can look this up. It breaks it down even better. It's called labio velar, and it shows you that how you from using the two vowels you get the consonantal form of the letter. This is why in Greek it was called digamma, and in English it's called the W, because you got to have the two U's to get the consonantal form of that. So you have to take a vowel from that consonant in order to get the U. This is why it's a double letter. This is what we have to understand. So if you don't have the W, you can't get the U. So when people, when you see the Yahoo and they don't put the W there, how are you getting the U? The U has to come from the consonant form in order to get that, because there is no separate letter in the Hebrew that represents consonants and vowels like we have in our alphabet. The Y is representing the both of them. And this is a simple thing to grasp. Now, Yahweh. I already explained to you how Yahweh cannot be the Father's name because you're missing the Ashar, and you don't have the vowel that's going in after that, which will represent the Ashar. So we have to understand that Yahweh is also not the Father's name. Okay. So now, last names we're gonna deal with. I ain't gonna have to waste too much time on these. Is Yehovah. You have Yehovah, and then you have Jehovah. Okay, and so immediately we know that Jehovah is a false name because nobody gave the Jehovah Witnesses any authority to change the Father's name. They recognize that in the scrolls, Y.H.W.H appears. So who gave them the authority to change Y.H.W.H from Y.H.W.H to J.H.W.H? Nobody gave them the authority to do that. There is nothing recorded with Charles Russell speaking to any Malak, anybody from above that authorized and told him this is okay for you to do that. Nothing is in that historical document saying that happened. Okay? So nobody gave you the authority to change the Father's name. And this is why when we go and we look in the Greek Septuagint, which was written around, 300 BC, we have to understand even the Greeks understood the name to be transliterated, because when you look at the Septuagint, you see the Paleo-Hebrew in there represent the Father's name. They did not just change it to vowels like how they try to do with the false name Jesus. They kept the Father's name as it was supposed to, how it was originally transliterated, was supposed to be transliterated from language to language. They understood this, so why would they? Who would give them the authority to change the Father's name from Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh to J-H-V-H? And then they say, well, we don't know what the Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh mean, but then you created the false name Jehovah. Nobody authorized that false name. The Yehovah, I don't have to waste time on it. We understand that the E and the O, this is Greek. This came out of Greek suppressing the true original Hebrew vowels in order to get those letters. Those are not original Hebrew letters. And the V right here, what they say is Va come from the Latin, okay? It's not even Hebrew. And then you have scholars out here like Jeff Benner, who will, in his video on the pronunciations of the Father's name, the man spewed out 3 names out of his mouth. And see, this is why I have no respect for these scholars out here, these men that are putting these titles in front of their name, because they show you how illiterate they is. Now, if the scholars agree that, and they said Yah is the short version of the Father's name, which we know Yah is the Son. But if you're telling us that Yah, Yo, and Hey, which is the first part of the Father's name, is Yah, how did you get Yeh? This is what I don't understand. Now this man is supposed to be a Hebrew scholar, and he has all these ancient Hebrew books put out about trying to teach all of this Hebrew. But I want you to teach me this. How did you get Yah? We know that the Yod and the Hey, what y'all say is the short version of the Father's name is Yah. But then you told the people in your video that the Father's name was Yehovah and Yehovah. All of these false names. The Father's first name ain't no Yeh, nothing. That's Greek. And we understand this. Any true teacher, any true scholar that studies the history know this. The E and the O came by the suppression of the true vowels, and it came from the Greeks. This E and this O stuff is Greek. That is not original Hebrew. And this is what I'm saying. When you're sitting up under these teachers and scholars that are not qualified to teach, this is what happened. It dumbs you down. Logical sense tell you, if you got Yah right there, we got the first part of the Father's name. So if anybody come to you with some Yah, you know this is false. And then you're talking about you teaching the ancient Hebrew. Man, get up out of here, man. It's all false, man. All false. So there you have it, my brothers and sisters. I just firmly established everything. I gave you precept on precept. Everything I gave you was factual. You can look all of this stuff up, and I encourage you to take the time to look these things up and confirm the things that I'm delivering for you. You know, because basically what I just did, I just broke all of the strongholds of the devil. I removed all of the stumbling blocks that have been causing people to stumble. So that they're not haven't been able to come into the accurate knowledge of the Father's name. You know, you have people that say, well, the Father's name is Y.H.W.H. I just showed you that the Father's name is not Y.H.W.H, but that Y.H.W.H is nothing more than 4 consonants that represents the Father's name, and we have to insert the correct Hebrew vowels into those 4 Hebrew consonants to get the correct pronunciation and the correct name of the Father. And this is what I did for you, okay? I'll prove to you that this 6th Hebrew letter up here is Y, okay? And it can also take on a vowel, which is U, okay? I established that that letter is not vowel, but that comes from the Latin, okay? And the people over there in modern day Israel today, this is what they speak, Yiddish. It's a mud language. It's a combination of the Hebrew, it's a combination of German, Aramaic, and Latin. The Va, that comes from the Latin, that is not Hebrew. I firmly established that the Father's name is not Ahia, Asher, Ahia, but that the Father's name is Yahuwah. Ahia, Asher, Ahia is the meaning of the Father's name. So all the people out there that thought that, okay, the Father's name, I just broke everything down simply and showed you that Ahia, Asher, Ahia is the meaning of the Father's name. The Father's name is Yahuwah. Okay? So, you know what I want to leave you with, and this is, you know, for those of the elect out there, the things that I'm delivering to you, that I just delivered to you, those who do not understand the things or, you know, knew the things that I just delivered today, I advise you to take time out of whatever it is that you got going on in your life and understand this. Because, see, what we have to understand, when the scriptures state that only those calling on the name of Yahuwah is going to be saved in these last days, the scriptures are not lying, okay? We have to come into a full understanding of the things that I just delivered to you today. There's no reason why any believer out there should not be able, at a drop of a dime, to break the Father's name down. It doesn't matter where you at in the world, okay? If I was in China, if I was in Russia, if I was in North Korea, at the drop of a dime, I can break the Father's name down and discredit all of the other false names that's out there. Okay, if I was in a jungle with no internet, no nothing, I could still break the Father's name down because it's in me. You see, the first thing the Father did before he sent me out to teach his word was seal me with his name and with his son's true name. I checked all of the false names to see if there was any flaws in the names and what name didn't have no flaw. And when we look at the name Yahuwah, this is the only name that has no flaws in it. Everything is coming back accurate, so we know that the Father's name is Yahuwah. So if you cannot break the Father's name down, then what I advise you to do is time to put all of this other research to the side, okay, that people are wasting their time on. You know, what's going on in Antarctica, what did they find in Antarctica, the flat earth theory, the Illuminati, what the elite are doing, you know, the shadow government. If you can't break the Father's name down, then you need to put all of that to the side, because this is the true salvation. Remember, Y.H.W.H said that them taking in the accurate knowledge of Yahuwah means everlasting life. This is what we have to grasp. But see, people don't understand this because, see, the devil has created all these devices. You know, you can break down how many passes Cam Newton threw on Sunday, and, you know, who the Bulls playing today, and, you know, how many points LeBron. You can break down all of this stuff, but when it comes to the Father's name, all the devil do is throw all these devices out there, because the devil is never going to let up off of you. Remember, it said that he retired for a season on Y.H.W.H, but he came back, though. So all the devil is doing is putting all these devices out there. They know you offer to all of this stuff for the world, worrying about all this other stuff. And then when he send them Yahusha and them Yahweh people at you and rattle you and tell you, oh, you know, A is the only original ancient Hebrew vowel, you can't break none down. You can't explain none because you didn't take the time to grasp what I just delivered to you. So just like Yahushua said, if you build your house in sand, when the waves come, you're going to be washed away. You have to get this in you. You have to know this. All that other stuff can wait. You can start getting back into that stuff once you grasp this, because this is where the true salvation is at. Worrying about who's going to win the Major League World Series, who cares? And this is the stuff people waste their time worrying about and trying to get knowledge on. All this other stuff that has nothing to do with the kingdom. This is what you need to know. So on that note, my brothers and sisters, I'm going to lead this teaching to you this morning in the name of our King, Yahushua HaMashiach. Shalom.